You're listening to the Served Up Show, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful content. Your hostesses, Bridget Albert, is best known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with over 25 years of experience. And I'm Julie Milroy, best known for my passion for leading change and helping others grow in their careers. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hello, Served Up friends. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Philana Bouvier, an industry leader, an Asian American woman, and my sister from another mister. Philana is the president of Demeine Estates, where she provides leadership and vision in creating a best-in-class sales and marketing organization. Demeine Estates serves and supports the dynamic and growing portfolio of the Lawrence family fine wine estates and import supplier partners. The collection includes Heights Cellar, Burgess, Stony Hill, Brendel, Matze, and additional esteemed international producers across France and Italy. Philana is also a fierce advocate for empowering women. She's held multiple leadership roles within the community, and not only to create a path for women, but a movement to foster empowerment and elevate the role of women in the beverage alcohol industry unapologetically. Now grab a glass of your favorite Demeine Estate wine, sit back, and get inspired. Hey, Philana, thanks so much for joining us on Served Up.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you, Julie.
Oh, my goodness. I know we've been talking about this for so long, and you're such a busy lady all over the place. I just feel so fortunate that we have this time together.
Yeah. Well, you and I have known each other. We've been kind of running into each other over the years from when I was at the wholesaler. And I just love the fact that we've both kind of been in each other's careers, and now we get to actually get to know each other more. So just having you in my life, Julie, is amazing. You add so much value. So thank you for all that you do for us, especially in this business.
Oh, thank you, Philana. I still remember when I first met you, and I think that was when I just started getting involved with WSWA, and you were chair of the Women Leadership Council. And I remember being there. And first I was just I didn't even know WSWA had, first of all, women. And then on top of that, women that run it. And then on top of that, a Women Leadership Council. So I was so excited at the first one that I was. And I remember seeing you and being like, oh my gosh, an Asian woman. It's like one thing to see women in the business, but, and you were just, it was so wonderful. And you were so busy. I think this was the one that was in Virginia, and you were running around, but I felt like we connected in a way, just like through, and so there was just that connectivity. And I feel like throughout, the years, any opportunity I've had to be able to connect with you has just been wonderful. And I feel like we're able to do it a lot more.
Yes. And I think what you've done to your career, Julie, is amazing. So in having this podcast, having a platform to discuss everything that's important in the business that is not only personal, but also professional, because I think we all kind of share the same challenges in a lot of ways. And also similar opportunities that we get a chance to be a part of. But it's important that you created this circle to support each other. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, it wasn't the original plan when we had the idea to do a podcast. But it's become that way. And I think that there's really an appetite to hear from others, right, that have really navigated through this industry, and all the various things that they've done. And we always say that if we can get one listener to be inspired by your story, that's a huge success.
Absolutely.
So speaking of Philana, tell us about little Philana, where we've all heard bits and pieces, but would like to a little bit more about
what growing up in your life was, what were the things that you really gravitated towards to kind of take you on your journey to where you are today? I know that's a very open-ended question.
It's a big question. Oh, no, I appreciate it. And thank you for having me share my story. And I know a lot of people, especially in the industry, do know a little bit about how I came to be. I always say that the wine industry found me. I had a very difficult upbringing. I kind of raised myself. My parents got divorced when I was at a young age, and I decided to live on my own, right? Every child that goes through divorce handles it differently. And, I think my story is no more unique than others, actually, because you kind of just go, everyone goes through it differently. And, coming from, I think my parents being from Vietnam, and coming over to the United States as immigrants and working really hard to get to where they needed to go. And then seeing your family not be able to come together during really, really rough times, I think was probably a challenge at the time when I was growing up. I definitely overcame it by, coming on my own. And what I do owe a debt to my parents for is that they did teach me a hard work ethic, which is really important, right? And I think it's also our culture. I mean, my parents were very, very hardworking. So I definitely got that from them and being very diligent. And then when I, came on my own, I started in Hawaii, actually, in the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. It was right before my 17th birthday that I moved there on my own and just raised myself. And I fell into my first job in the, so-called liquor industry, wine industry, was actually a merchandiser at Anheuser-Busch. And it was a great experience. I started at the bottom, just like everybody else did. So similar as far as my upbringing in the business, but different because I didn't come through it traditionally, right? I kind of had to go to every level and didn't have some of the solid backgrounds that I think most people look for when you go into executive management, right? I didn't go through the Gallo School of Training. Unfortunately, did not graduate from college. So I really was, in a way, hustling, right? Just trying to ensure that whatever I was doing, I wanted to make sure that I could get a seat at that table. And a lot of it was I kind of just bulldozed my way into the business in a lot of ways. But very fortunate because I had wonderful mentors throughout my life and have really kept me on a very, very positive path. But I started out in Hawaii, was a merchandiser, became a sales rep. That was when Southern Wine and Spirits entered the market, and I ended up jumping over and was a fine wine sales rep for the coastal division, which is more on the Diageo side of the wine business. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Very familiar. We still have coastal in many markets. I was actually just with one of our leads of Florida that manages coastal. So
that's when it first started, was the coastal division. And
it was actually our first dedicated division.
Yes.
Like the first, one that we did like that. That's so funny.
Yeah. So it was great. And I did it for 4 years. And then I had some challenges because I wanted to move up in the organization. And I decided that Hawaii was too small for me. And so I actually ended up resigning from my wine rep job at Southern, and I moved to California. And I founded a water company, started my own importing business. And serendipitously, I met the Underwood family that owns Young's Market Company. And they ended up working with me, and I was importing this water into the country. And I was just really kind of had this entrepreneurial bug. So I started, it's funny because I look back on how I started that import business. And now, over 10 years later, I'm running an import business. So it was almost like the beginning of how I, decided I'm basically going to my own school, right? That I had created. And years later, it all comes to fruition, which is so funny about life. But I was very fortunate to have met the Underwood family. They brought me into the organization. I became a vice president for national accounts for California. And that was really my entry into serious, wholesale career, where I started as a VP, moved my way up through the organization, did different levels of management. And then when the opportunity came for me to run and be the first female GM to run a wholesaler, I did it for Hawaii.
Oh,
and
wow.
At 35, I ended up moving back to Hawaii, took on that role. And at the time, I did not realize I was the only woman. I was just surviving as a GM, and it was one of the greatest humbling lessons as a leader, because as a GM, you're doing everything, right? Especially for a small state. You're running operations, you're doing logistics, you're having pricing and programming, you're overseeing the chains, you're doing on-sale. So you're like involved in every single position. And it was a very hands-on experience for me. And I learned a great deal. And, I was lucky to have been able to serve as its GM for about almost 5 years, got the tap on the shoulder and was asked to move back to California through the Young system and oversee new business development for our corporate office. And that was working right with Mr. Underwood and obviously the executive team in California. And that was an extremely valuable experience because I learned how to do new business and new business development. And I will say for those, and you know this, you do this now, Julie, anyone that has a new business development title, I give them a lot of credit because it's vague enough where you have to, new business is tough because you have to identify challenges, identify risks, be proactive. Bringing in new business is an entirely different skill set, and making sure you bring in the opportunity to the team and getting the right stakeholders around that table to ensure that deal comes through. And it's, I strongly recommend new business development for anyone that's coming up through the wholesale tier is not only do execution, but really get involved in strategy and process because it really ties in everything together. And that's what I did. I did that for almost 4 years. RNDC came into the market and ended up partnering with Young's Market Company. And obviously that transition happened. And I ended up moving over to RNDC and became their vice president of fine wine. And it was an interesting switch for me because I had been at this really, really high level in the organization at Young's. I went through a transition, obviously very similar when Southern came in and bought Glaciers, right? Everyone kind of has to reassess. And I think you have a little bit of a hit to the ego, as I always say, because you're so used to being so on top. And then you have another organization that comes in and is asking you to basically prove yourself all over again. And you have this moment in your career where you say, okay, do I prove myself with this team or do I quit because, I can do it better anyway? And you have to realize, I think for me, it was a decision of staying humble and staying on, right? And just surviving that transition, which was really important. I decided to transition into that role. And I'm glad I did it because I actually learned a lot about just, running fine wine across the country and the fact that RNDC was in 28 states. And I learned a lot about the process. And I'm glad I did that. But then, of course, the pandemic hit. And as we all know, when the pandemic hit, everyone took that experience differently, right? Some people became very successful during the pandemic. And they decided, if you look at businesses across the sector of the restaurant business, some restaurants got, they decided to do takeout. They pivoted, right? They just they did what they could. Some restaurants, unfortunately, they should have been more supported. And I think we're still recovering from that. And there's a lot that needs to be done to help support the on-premise business. And that needs to happen. And, a lot of people, you saw also this increase in influencers and somms that decided to, be very creative in wine selling and making sure that they were more available and more consulting work was happening. And that was really great to see. And then you saw a change and a shift with diversity and inclusion, which needed to happen and still needs to happen. And as you know, I'm a staunch advocate of that. And it's something that's very important, especially as we continue to grow together in leadership. And I actually put it out into the universe and I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this corporate gig anymore in wholesale. I wanted to challenge myself and do something different. And I was very fortunate to have been recruited by, I think, Carlton, who is a phenomenal leader. He's, one of the most, not only compassionate, but is just an amazing, he's a builder. He builds businesses and is very inspirational to work for. And what he is doing out here in Napa and how Demeine Estates was created and the Lawrence Wine Estates and the wineries that we represent, it's been an absolute honor and privilege. And so I call it a graceful pivot and moved over to the supplier side and haven't looked back.
And now your role is Miss President of Demeine Estates. Let's not downplay that.
It's very sweet. Very sweet. Yeah. Thank you. And it's humbling, right? The role is very important because you are in a position where you can affect change and you have to, I think it's important to have a vision. Demeine has been extremely fortunate because I believe we have the best people working with us currently right now, the best people. You're in any organization and when you're building something, it's difficult. And there's not a lot of people out there. If you think about it, when it comes to building a company, you have to be able to get through the hard stuff. And most people think of building and they think, okay, well, I'm going to build it for the next, let's say, however long. And it's just, but if you are not really actively working on building it, then you do get behind. And I always say, Demeine is a company of builders, not a company of maintainers. When we interview people, and we've had some really fantastic people come through our organization, but what happens is they realize too, like, wow, it's different working for a company that's a startup versus working for a company that's already established are two different skill sets that are needed. And you have to be able to have the wherewithal to say, you know what, even though this company may not be as established as where I was coming from, I get to build my own team and build my own department. And it's not easy. And, I know that I'm very confident that the people that we have here at Demeine, they've all been able to build their own departments and build a division. And it's one of the greatest feelings in the world to come into something. And if you start off with a blank canvas and you just get to build it, when you see those results, it's like the greatest feeling ever.
It is, right? Because it's like a catch-22. You can say, well, I was grandfathered in this, or I took somebody else's team. So, it's not mine. And then again, when you have to build, it's like, why wasn't this already in place? And it would have been different if it was already set up. And I see that too within our organization. I mean, we're obviously a huge organization, but we're also family owned, and each state kind of built their own stuff. So in a lot of ways, we act like a family owned company, a family owned business, and we would have great talent that come from some of these, public traded companies where everything's lined up, and you could always see who is going to last and who's not. Because if you come in and you expect everything to be perfect and systems and processes in place as you would have in like a publicly traded company, you're not going to get that here. But what I love about just even our company is this entrepreneurial spirit, right? You have a great idea. You can impact that and make it your own. And I think for you to be able to come in and lead Demeine Estates, have this team, everybody be able to, build it on their own. And then, by the way, have some incredible wines, like the best in the, like that definitely helps.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you guys build your portfolio of wines? How are you kind of sourcing new brands? Cause with some of these new ones and what's the vision, of, are they certain countries, certain appellations or how do you guys, what fits into Demeine Estates?
Oh, I think that's such a great question. And thank you for that. So, Demeine is split into two different bucks, right? We have a domestic luxury portfolio, which are all of our Lawrence Wine Estate wines, right? So obviously Galen Lawrence and Carlton created a company called Lawrence Wine Estates. And that company is the company that owns Stony Hill, Burgess, Anchorage, Brendel, Heights, and and Haynes. And they're continuing to buy not only just in the vineyards, and Carlton's he actually has done such a fantastic job in his vision is building a company of legacy wineries and repositioning them for, it's almost like we reposition luxury in a lot of ways, right? We take something that is so special like Heights that has over a 60-year history and he puts on, he creates a brand new label for it. And it's really just like, it's almost like a little bit of a reposition, right? Just a light polish. And it's not changing the history, because history is what makes us, that's what's important here, is being able to tell its history and honoring the history of all of our legacy wineries. So you'll see it's really awesome when you look at the wineries that the Lawrence family owns. You'll see a thread in history. All the Napa Valley history books, they always talk about the benchmark wineries and how it started. And there's only a few, right, that are like that. Burgess is one of them, Stony Hill and Heights. And they all have history, and they were all tied to Napa Valley. And it's about low intervention winemaking, natural farming, and creating wines that are full of elegance and balance and are structured, which is naturally going to come with low alcohol, right? And the vineyards being farmed naturally. And so that for us is what's important for our domestic wineries. On the import side, it's led by our new business development is actually led by Scott Diaz, who's my SVP of marketing, and our director of portfolio development, Kimberly Bowden. They're doing a phenomenal job because we identify growing trends in the import market and then we build off of them. So as an example, Chablis is very hot, right? Mm-hmm. You can't get enough of it. And it adds enough volume. It's got enough margin in there. We look for things for partners that will not only be mutually beneficial for us, but also be mutually beneficial for the distributor. So, at Demeine, number one, we respect our wholesalers so much. We don't believe in the direct model. We want to go through the wholesale model, but we also want to make sure the wholesaler is making money. And I always joke around with the wholesalers because every supplier will say, oh, you're making too much margin. Mm-hmm. We ensure that they make enough margin, but we also partner with them. And we want to make sure that we're bringing in items that you're all looking for and not like a ton of SKUs that you have to set up. So La Chablisienne is one of the largest producers of Chablis. Mm-hmm. And we can confirm and bring in, amounts of Chablis and not run out, which is important for a distributor. You don't want to run out of stock on something that is actually in demand. Chianti is another category that we've identified that's growing and doing well. Everyone loves Italian wines. We brought on the Mazzei portfolio, 600 years of winemaking. So it all ties together to legacy. La Chablisienne's been doing it for 100 years. They're celebrating their 100-year anniversary this year. We have a Burgundy by Domaine de Monti, which is Etienne Monti. We also have his Santa Barbara wines, which is Racine. The sparkling is phenomenal. So we really identify and allocate time towards growing trends in the market. We're not going to fill the book up with a bunch of things that aren't going to sell. That's not who we are. It's going to be a very carefully curated luxury portfolio. We have a Barolo Barbaresco from Carome, which is delicious, the most beautiful family ever, just the nicest people. And we just love partnering with them. And we have a fantastic champagne, which is Le Grand Haas, which is garnering outstanding scores. It's a boutique champagne. The Blanc de Blanc is delicious. So we really work on just choosing the right partners. We're not just filling a book to fill a book. Mm-hmm. That's not who we are.
I love that because I think, obviously the fine wine world is so abundant. It's so big. There's amazing wines everywhere. And the continuity is tough, right? Especially if you have national scale and you're in, across all markets is you get something good, everybody gets a taste of it, and then it's not available anymore, and then you've got to wait till the next vintage. And I'm constantly reminded it is an agricultural product, right? So it's so funny. We had one of our, supplier, annual meetings, and they're like, yeah, they didn't understand that it's an agricultural product, right? It's not like spirits where you can just produce a ton of it. And I think the fact that you guys are really focused on, that type, like a Chablis, and partnering with a winery that you can get that, that volume to make sure that, if you've got that restaurant that loves the wine, that they can continue to keep getting it.
Yeah. Guaranteed continuity. And you basically, that's the word, is continuity, is just ensuring that, in order for a distributor to build your brand, you have to be in stock.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Right. And then of course, there's the distributor management. I think what Demeine brings to the table is we have all of our leaders at Demeine have a ton of experience in distributor management, and it's being present, right? My team would almost say that I'm almost too involved because I'm very hands-on because I know everyone, right? I grew up in the wholesale business. So it's kind of hard for a wholesaler to give me one narrative when I know how it works, right? I understand the inner workings, but I also completely respect where wholesale is going as well. But we do need, we're a small player still. We have to punch above our weight. And I tell this to the team all the time, to gain the attention and to be prioritized at the distributor is one of the hardest things to do because they have so much that they're chasing already. So you have to add value when you're having a distributor meeting. You have to be buttoned up. You have to have a presentation ready. You have to have your questions. Because we're small. And so it's important for us that we need to be nimble and flexible, but also very supportive to the distributor, but ensure we got to punch above our weight.
Yeah. And it's true, right? I think the best working relationships are the people that have had experience on both sides. So even a lot of the new talent that we have coming over in leadership roles have been on the supplier side for a long time. And now they're coming on distributor and vice versa. And it really does help to kind of create that partnership. I think in the past, it was always like distributor versus supplier, and everybody's like holding their cards really close and not sharing. And what I've learned is like, the more transparent we are, we have the common goal, right? Is to sell more, is that when you have that transparency, that trust and that partnership, you can really see the opportunity. So that's wonderful. And I love that our companies get to work together. It's really great because it's, there's so much pride in being able to represent these brands, but so take us through so you've had so many different roles, leadership roles, being the first female GM of a state. We're still working towards that, by the way,
I know.
In 2023.
It's not for everyone. I have to say it's definitely not, that position. Being a GM is one of the most unappreciated roles at the wholesaler, because one day you're a hero and the next day you're not. And as a GM, you are having to really go through your day managing a lot of different things and making sure that suppliers are happy. And we all know that, there's always a few that would like more business and attention, of course, and then also managing the team, doing operations, but also warehouse and delivery. Mm-hmm. Warehouse and delivery, right? That's the number one most important thing, is just to make sure the product is delivered on time. And so I give a lot of credit to the GMs out there. It's tough. It's a tough job because it's not what people think it is. That's for sure.
It's not like they're just sitting in their big chair like, I'm the GM. And I do recognize it, and especially just in the last few years with all these natural disasters and hurricanes and storms and all this stuff, and now you're dealing with people's lives and families. And I do. So shout out to all of our GMs. Oh, we know you work so hard.
I know, but also but then also the women GMs. I mean, I know you have a few at Southern. I think the other distributors, there's areas of improvement where they need to, right? But we also need, and this is important, right, is in identifying the women that are coming up to the organization and creating that bench for them so that way they can slide into that spot. Mm-hmm. And I believe that there is probably more room for improvement on that side, and allowing women to come forward. And it's not even like, because we don't need to be allowed to, I mean, I just do it, right? No one needs to allow me to do anything. But to create a space where there is a path forward, right? Because that the people that are being picked into these roles have been, I think what's great, what Southern has shown is just the next generation of leadership, right? Having Jennifer Chaplin there, just identifying the next gen leaders, especially for women at wholesale, is important. And for the women out there, the wholesale life is not an easy life. I mean, you are asked to do a lot. You're working beyond the 8-hour day. It's unfortunate, but it is. And you have to ask yourself whether or not that is something, there's sacrifices that have to be made. And it is harder on the female side because there, because we feel like we need to do anything, be everywhere and do everything and do it to the best of our ability and not feel guilty. And we have to stop apologizing every 5 minutes, right? That's like, as women, like that's the first thing we do is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, you never hear men apologize for wanting to be successful or wanting to move to the next spot. Or, I can remember talking to my boss going, I'm so sorry, but, I'm really thinking about moving to this next role. Like, and so you're so ingrained to apologize to be successful. And it's like, I really encourage women, like, it is okay to be loud and successful and feel good about it. Right.
Yeah. 100%. And I think that was kind of the next thing I wanted to kind of ask you is, and I think you really come across as, and I'm speaking for you, but like, you didn't wait for somebody to invite you to the table. You just kind of dove right into there, right? Like here I am, I'm showing up. And I think that's something I've really admired about you is that you're like unapologetically you, right? And there's no hiding behind it. And I feel that as women, we need that, right? And versus like thinking of all the reasons why we might not be included or might not be accepted or might be awkward is you just kind of rip off the Band-Aid and go in. So, if you were going to give advice to other women that have maybe held back a little bit and hoping that there's going to be this path that opens up, what is your advice based on your experience?
Be your own cheerleader and be okay with it. I do believe that as we're growing up, and I'll use myself as an example, and this obviously isn't the same experience for everyone, but when I was focused on being my own cheerleader as I was coming up to the organization, it was almost like sometimes I would get feedback going, oh, Philana's like, she is all about herself, right? That's what you get. She's promoting herself to get into this role, right? And self-promotion for a woman is like, it's like looked down upon. But yet when you see the men slide in to these roles, and I know they work hard too. So I don't take anything personally by saying I see a slide, but they're like on a golf course networking. They're out with their colleagues at a dinner. They're being invited to the meetings, but the women aren't there, right? To advocate for themselves. It is okay as a young person to advocate for yourself and to promote yourself. It is okay. And I wish I would have done more of it. I only started doing more of it as I got higher into my roles because I had the confidence, right? I had the title. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be this title that I was given, that I've earned. But when I was younger, it was almost hard for me to advocate myself because I started believing all the things that when you interview for a role, and I say this to my team, look beyond the resume, look at the life experience. Don't just take the resume and go, okay, this person doesn't have the experience. I'm not even going to interview them. Like you have to look beyond it because if someone were to look at my resume, granted, I had the experience with the distributors, but there's other parts of my resume where there's gaps. And so I really had to take it upon myself to be not only to show up when I needed to show up, but to like not leave until they gave me the job. Right. That was kind of my point is like, I would fly myself to a meeting and literally sit in front of my boss's desk and just be like, I'm not leaving here until till something gets done because I was so diligent. But you have to be able to talk yourself into it because there's days where you don't feel like doing that. Right. It's exhausting to constantly be pushing and climbing and right. And it's harder for some and easier for others to have that confidence. And, I even say this to myself today, to continue to build your confidence is an ongoing journey. It never ends. Right.
Yeah.
You still got to talk yourself. I still do it to this day. And you're always constantly having to prove yourself to somebody because there's always going to be somebody that's going to challenge you. And you have to just have a very strong mindset. And, if being an honest, good person where you're treating people with respect and you work hard, it does pay off. Working hard does pay off. And I did not take any shortcuts. and it has paid off. And I think for my work ethic today, my team knows we don't like shortcuts. I want them to do it the right way and to build it the right way. And it can sometimes take a little bit longer. It can sometimes be frustrating because you're still building a process and laying a foundation. But to challenge yourself and to get through the hard days, you've got to have the confidence and be your own cheerleader.
I love that. And I think it's something that we need to hear over and over again, because I think that was one of the first, the best advice I got, when I joined Southern. I had a big gap between working for like a big company, and going back to a big one. I had met with one of the brand ambassadors at the time, Sarah Halstead, where she told me, she's like, my best advice is toot your own horn, because nobody's going to toot it for you.
Yes.
And I didn't really know what that meant, but then I started seeing you get so many wins throughout the day, right? And talking to like maybe that salesperson, you had a great win because the buyer told you you're the best salesperson they ever had.
Right.
They added this by the glass or this or that. Like, you have to share those successes, not only for everybody else to know, but for you to know what your capabilities and the value that you bring. And as you do that, you start building that confidence, and you will have people saying, oh, it's just about you. It's, or you're just self-promoting. And I think the thing that I've always kept in mind is everything that I'm doing and whether I'm, sharing my successes, it's all for the benefit of the business, right? It's all about pushing the business forward. And I think if you have that value set of what's important to you, like you said, good person, hardworking, treat people well, those are values. So I've turned it around. It's like, no, I'm not self-serving. I'm value serving, right? I'm serving my own values and the values to my customer.
I like that.
Right. It's not self-serving, and it's okay, because ultimately everything I'm doing is to move the business forward so that we can all succeed. It's not about me making an extra couple $100 or whatever it is, or me getting, attention or fame. It's about the overall objective of the company. And I think that we should all, if that's your goal, right, is to move the business and the overall team, it's okay to share your successes, because people need to know, right? It's sharing best practices so that they do the same.
Right. And we encourage all of our team members. It gets uncomfortable, right? When you challenge yourself and you become an advocate for yourself, it's so important because you learn so much, and you learn how to advocate for your own department. You learn how to advocate for your team. And so it's a process mentally that you go through as a leader, that if you can do it for yourself, then you'll know how to do it for others. And as someone that now, it's not about myself, right? It's about Demeine and advocating for Demeine, advocating for my leadership team, ensuring that they get a fair share and a fair shot at something that they're trying to build with me, right? So it's a team effort. Mm-hmm. It's a team effort. And I think being the cheerleader for other women is so important. We need women to be successful because together we are more powerful. Mm-hmm. One of, there's challenges always when you see other women that are competitive with each other. But to me, it's not worth it. It's never worth it, because if you are spending so much of your time trying to, unfortunately, and I've seen it in my career, right, where women are not as invited to sit at the table with other women, we're only hurting ourselves, because the gap is already small, with after the post-pandemic and the fact that we do need to add more flexibility for working mothers. And it's important that you have companies that understand what working moms go through, right? But then how can they move up in an organization if they're not in the office? And so we have to be able to create, obviously having platforms like this, and being able to educate and support other women in the business while they come up is I think it's vital to any success for any industry.
Absolutely. And I feel that is something that continues to be a challenge, right? Is other women leaders supporting other women. And I think you nailed it on the spot with when you learn to advocate for yourself in a very meaningful, thoughtful way to, drive the overall objective, you are then able to do it for others.
That's
where
right.
where I feel that, it is a challenge is sometimes people not getting there, right? Not being able to advocate for others. And more than ever, we need to advocate for women. Everybody needs to advocate for women, and women need to advocate for other women. Yeah. And I feel the guys do it so naturally. I see it all the time. They barely know him. Oh, he's a great guy. Yeah, I like him. He's great. He's great. And I don't know. I feel like women are a lot more, we're a lot more conservative with our referrals and saying like, oh, this person's great. This person's great. And whereas the guys do it so easily, and I think that we need to be a little bit more open to bringing other women to the table when we have those opportunities.
Yes.
And that reach. I mean, how often are you the only woman within, we could name these, right? And I think even bringing it up, I was at a meeting and it was so funny because me and my counterpart, he runs Foley nationally, Jonathan Hollister, shout out. And he was like texting. We were like all in California about to meet up. And he's like, okay, I'll meet you guys at the bar. And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. And he's like, everybody with you? And I'm like, yes, I have all the boys, because it was like me and like 6 of the guys, right? I'm like, I'm bringing
know.
And he just kind of laughed. He's like, oh my God, you're right. Like, if it's so normal, and it's not like we're going to change anything right there. And I love all the guys, this is a great team. I'm not taking anything away from it, but it's okay to
recognize,
point out the obvious and say like, hey, you guys, and it's not because of lack of talent, with women, like when you look at like the manager or even director down to the sales, there's so many women, right? But what happens is it stops. Once you get to that VP level, then it really slows down. But I think the more that we continue to advocate for each other, get champions, be a champion for other women, and continue to ask those men to be champions, we can start kind of changing that.
I always say to the men, it's great. It's fun. It's so interesting. You just said like the men to be champions, right? And in my wholesale days, I used to say to the men, like, you don't have a choice. You have to champion women. Like, why wouldn't you want a diverse team? Why wouldn't you want diversity of thought? Why wouldn't you want different opinions and really learning the business through a different lens? And it's like, in order for any business to be successful, regardless of what the business is, right? Whether it's wine or retail or any other industry, you have to have women in that organization driving some of those execution points and driving some of that business, driving the business, because you need to have a balance, right? It's just important to have a balance. And that's a kind of just, to me, like common sense, right? Like, and we always talk about diversity in the business, but it really comes to your DNA. I mean, you have to be diverse by nature, right? This isn't, I don't want to have to work in an organization where I need to take a test to learn whether or not I'm diverse or not.
Yes. I feel, I'm so glad you said that, because it's like all this about D&I, and like, you need to take training on D&I. And I'm like, and I think for us, like, we were born into D&I, like it's part of our blood and whatever, but it's almost like you can't teach D&I. It's either part of your values or it's not, right. And what I do feel that in our industry, and though that there's still a lot of room for change, I do see the change happening. Even from when I got in, 15, 20 years ago, it's different today than it was, right? With someone like you being president of one of the finest wine portfolios in the world, right? And being able to show up who you are as you are, not wearing like the pinstripe suits, trying to look like the man, like you're showing up as a woman, unapologetic. And I think that that's so important. But as an industry, we are very tied to pop culture too. So if you're going to be, if you're going to be relevant in the market and where our consumers are, by the way, half of the consumers are women, right? So you need to be able to speak to that. But then the diverse consumers, right? I mean, and also the millennials that are so mixed and blended, like you need that diverse leadership to really speak to your customers and your consumers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And it's definitely, you see more attention on it, which is great. I love that it's a subject matter that people aren't like, people are talking about it more. I mean, when I was at the wholesaler 20 years ago,
God forbid you talk about that.
I know.
Keep your mouth shut.
Right. Now it's like there's organizations and there's educational programs, which I think is important. And it's, and I think leadership programming is really important, but it's also just working together, right? It's just being able to work together for a common goal and to get results out of it. These are all positive things. Like, why wouldn't you? I mean, I just think about the wine business, how great it is that like, you and I met years ago during WSWA, right? I've been wanting to get to like, we never had an opportunity to really network in the same room, except only at WSWA, if you think about it, because I was at a different wholesaler. And now it's like, it's coming full circle. And to me, to see you, like, I mean, I just absolutely love seeing you, like when you post on LinkedIn or you're just like, here I am, or this is what I'm doing, or it's like, you want to see the people in your life shine. And that is a good thing. And for the women out there that don't allow other women to shine, we're only hurting ourselves. And we need all women to just make room at the table. Like, you don't have to be the only woman in the room that the guys go to. Open it up. I think that's so important, and give other women an opportunity to have a voice is like, it's the most powerful thing we can do as a leader.
Right. Like, every day you should look for an opportunity that when you are talking to your network of leadership of, these men, that you drop a woman's name.
Yes.
Mention somebody like, hey, I seen Philana lately, she's amazing, and I think those things are really helpful. But, I still remember like you and I being, meeting in passing, but me sending you like a LinkedIn message, like, hey, I really liked it. And you were just so supportive, like, you're amazing. We should keep in touch, blah, blah, blah. And I think those things really help build that confidence, right? Because it's like, she's out there, she puts herself out there. I'm going to put myself out there, and I think that helps build your confidence when other people are supporting you, supporting your posts, engaging with you, supporting you at work stuff. And all those little things count. It's never, unnoticed.
Yeah. And putting yourself out there, it's okay to say it is intimidating. Putting yourself out there is intimidating, right? Because you know that it's not going to garner the same attention that you're hoping for. Sometimes it brings in, people may say, even negative attention, because you're putting yourself out there and you're opening yourself up to feedback. But here's what I'll say to people that, feedback is a gift and it can be constructive, but you will know the difference between someone giving you positive or critical feedback or someone that just wants to put you down. You'll know the difference.
Yeah.
And having that confidence to understand the difference, it's a good thing, right? It's a powerful thing to know, like, you know what? I know that this person, that's not about me. That's something about them.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And I'm going to be graceful about it. And you got to rise to the occasion. And it's hard, right? Because to be the bigger person is a huge leadership quality in itself. And to rise above, especially during times of challenges, and being able to create that network of supporters, that's where you have to build your support system, right? No one's going to do it for you. You got to build it yourself.
Yeah. And I always, some advice that I've been giving recently is just, you need to ask for the help, ask for the support. Like you were saying with, some of the men that you'd be like, no, you have no choice. You have to sponsor me. Like, you're doing it. Yes. I feel that, and I learned this, and don't get it wrong, but I've advice is, nobody cares, but everybody wants to help. Right. So like, nobody's thinking about how can I help Julie today? Or what does Julie need from me? They're not thinking about Julie, but if I go and say, hey, I need you to help me with X, Y, and Z. Yes, of course, I'll help you, and I think a lot of these leaders, they never want to say no, especially if they know you work hard, they know that you're really, out there trying to do the right thing. If you just tap them and say, there's this job I'm going for, or I need you to put in a good word for me, or can you help me with this? I don't think that there's a no, unless they've got positive feedback for you, right? And that's a time where you really want to take it and take it to heart. And it is a blessing.
Yeah, it's a blessing for sure. And you get to work with, I mean, look, I always say wine brings people together, and we work for an incredible industry where we get to travel and meet different people and again, see something. I mean, you know this working on the supply now that you're managing a supplier, right? Like how cool is it to see your brands grow in the business? It's such an awesome feeling, right? Because you get to actually witness building something. And I think that's what's so important about that's what's kept me in the wine business all these years is really the people. There's tougher days, it's always, but you know, you have to get through those tough days by knowing that there are people in your camp that are supporting you.
Yeah. And I think as challenging it is, and it's, you know, it's a tough business, right? It's always moving. It's very competitive. There's a lot going on, but you know, there's very few experiences where I don't like the people that I'm around. I mean, I truly enjoy the people that I work with, you know, and we're all so different and from from every angle, whether it's age, gender, interests, all that stuff. But in the end, we sell alcohol for a living, you know, and it's still rooted in hospitality. We are a hospitality industry. And I just love that there's so much that's going on with giving back to the community. And I think more than ever where beverage brands are actually, you know, giving back and doing things to mentor, you know, up and coming people to really build equity in this industry.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it.
So Philana, what are some things that you're really excited for in 2023 for Demeine Estates and kind of what you want to see flourish this year?
Oh, I love that question. All great questions you're asking, by the way. To me, this is what makes, I think, this a conversation that we're having in your podcast so fun, because the questions you're asking allows me to also be myself.
Yes, that's what we want.
Especially, you know, when you're in a leadership position, you kind of have to I want to make sure it's important to be professional always. You know, Demeine is just beginning, right? I say this to the team a lot. We're continuing to build the portfolio. We were founded during the pandemic. So we haven't gotten to a place yet where we actually know what normal is, because we're still building. And what makes me excited about, especially this year, is we're finally selling imports. We're getting into the import game. We're building out our domestic luxury portfolio. We're still launching brands, right? There's always something to do at Demeine. It's never a dull moment. That's for sure. And the team is continuing to evolve. That's what, to me, the most exciting is to see our leadership team evolve into their roles, because when you work for an organization where you're wearing so many different hats, it's like it's hard to actually do the job that you need to do without doing other things going on at the same time. And when you're building a team, you're wearing several hats because you don't have as much headcount as like the organization across the street. And you have to be okay with that. And what makes me excited for Demeine is we're just beginning. I mean, it's just beginning. I'm excited to see what's going to look like 5 years from now. I'm excited to see the portfolio continue to develop. I'm excited to see all of our hospitality experiences. They're going to be opening up this year. You know what the Lawrence Wine Estates is doing to Burgess. It's going to be open in the spring, as well as Stony Hill. And, you know, we just launched a new pavilion at Anchorage, which is called the Senses Experience. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing how that is all going to evolve, and how we're taking a major stake in hospitality and a major stake in the luxury cab portfolio and a major step forward in imports. And I love the fact that we're competing with all the big boys. I think that to me is what excites me is, for those that know me, I'm extremely competitive. I am also an extremely hard worker, and our team ethos and our philosophy, we all punch above our weight. So for us, we kind of like to give the competition a little run for their money, which makes me excited. We love to win at Demeine. We love to win, and we're nimble. We're small. We're a small and mighty team, But I can't be more proud of my team. I have a phenomenal leadership team, and I'm honored to work with them every day.
That's just amazing. I mean, you have to remind us that you guys were really born out of the pandemic, because just seeing how Demeine shows up in the brands and the awards that you're receiving is like, you would think that you guys have been around forever, and it is exciting to see that if this is what you can accomplish in the last few years, like what are the next few years like? And, and it just makes you think of that small production, amazing wine, right? It's small, but it's mighty, right? Once it gets into that bottle. And I'm just so excited, to follow your leadership, and thank you for paving the path for women leaders and executive leaders like you. Is being so approachable and just being your authentic self means so much. And it really does help give that confidence. I mean, definitely for me, and I'm sure you've impacted so many other women as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I just love being on here with you, Julie. And then anything I can do to assist, we got to get you out to our hospitality as well, and come out and visit us in Napa. And I think for the Southern Glaciers Network, we're really fortunate because we have a great distributor partner. I mean this. We have a fantastic engagement. We continue to drive for more engagement always, but it's important to note that our success wouldn't be here without our distributors. And we're very, very grateful for that. And I think having conversations and being as direct as possible, I invite all women to be just totally direct when it comes to working in this business, because life is so short. You got to just be able to ask a direct question and don't apologize for it.
100%. What a great way to wrap up. But yes, I mean, you'll be seeing me. I'd love to see you in Napa. I know the last time I saw you was here in Miami.
I know. We'll have to do it again.
Yes, we have to do it again. But thank you for everything that you do and for paving the way and sharing your story with us on Served Up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of future Served Up episodes. Cheers!